I guess that's good. Let's see here. If you are on, let me know if the audio is good, and we'll get started here in just a quick second after I knock over a few things here. Let's see. Well, it looks like the video's coming through. Like I said, if the audio is good, let me know. So we changed setups a little bit from last couple of times that we use this setup, and it seems to be working. So just don't have any confidence in it yet. So anyway, if it's working, let me know. Hybrid Muscle Garage. How's that Camaro coming, man? You done with it yet? I hate it when people ask me if one of my Chevelle's done. All right, let me fix this a little bit here, and we'll. All right. All right, so cool. If the audio is good, we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, I guess we're cool. Okay. Just want to go over a couple of quick things today. Really, have you seen any of the posts I made on Instagram and then in the community section here? Started a test on fuel filters. Now I got all of the stuff that's Dash 8 bodied, tested already. The stuff that is got a barbed end on it. I had every doggone thing I needed, but one Dash 8, I guess it's on there, Union flare fitting. That's it. So I'll pick up another one tomorrow when I'm out, and we'll get the rest of it tested. But that should be a really, really good video. It's something I've been thinking about for quite a while, and I had somebody ask me about it a year or so ago, and I kind of made some assumptions with it, and I don't like to assume anything, especially if somebody's asking you for your advice or an opinion, and so I thought, what the heck, I'll do it. The problem was this was a very expensive video to shoot. The Aeromotive filter I had, everything else I bought, and then I bought quite a few fittings, and then I realized that if I was going to do it right, that I needed to not use a used regulator. I needed to not use a used fuel pump, so I bought brand new ones of those too, just so we could, keep the test fair, and I didn't want anybody coming back with, well, you should have used a brand new fuel pump, and the results would have been different. All right, cool. So I just tried to figure out all the little variables that could have been a problem, and that's what we did. So, I guess where I'll start is something I saw, like the Aeromotive filter here. Oh, I need a wrench to get that one apart. I guess that was a little tight. Oh, or I think the filter swelled up on me. Let me see here. There we go. All right. Make sure I don't knock my beer over. Still have some fluid in these, I guess. So, anyway, the Aeromotive stuff I've used a lot in the past, and it's a good filter. It's got a really nice, positive. Oh, it's gonna drop everything today. It's been with my week is gone, but it's got a decent filter. This is a 10 micron filter. It's full of mineral spirit still. Another one of those things that I had to confirm with a fuel pump and filter manufacturer of what they actually used when they tested these, because most of the good ones like Aeromotive, they flow test everything, especially on the pumps. I don't know if they do it on all the filters, but I think that they do. And it's they use mineral spirits just because of the it's got the same dense gravity as the. Now this one is a cheap one by Jegs. This stuff I'm not going to go over in the video, but I thought you guys would like to see it. So we'll see if I can get that. I guess you can kind of see that a little bit. So that's the depth of that body. It goes all the way down, and then it comes into this union where the dash 8 fitting comes out. That's the filter. That is the only filtration piece that's in there. Now, I'm sure it probably works okay, but there's no surface area to that. And I think maybe that might be the reason why I got the results in the tests that I did. Um, when you have a lot of surface area to pick up junk and crap and material, then you've got a better filter. And I don't care what it is, if it's a paper element filter or even a crappy K&N filter. The more filtration area that you have, better off it'll be. That's it. That is literally all that's in that filter. And I've seen a couple other ones from. I think Summit has one that's similar to that, so I'm sure they're buying it from the same offshore place. But I guess I had never seen one before or never used one before, and if I had, I'd never pulled it apart. But that's the filter. So yeah, those are both 10 micron filters, and I don't doubt that it's probably rated at 10 microns. But with as much crap as in these older cars on fuel systems, that was a pretty interesting revelation in that. So anyway, I wanted to show that to you. Just thought it was kind of cool and something unique. This All-Star brand is it's a house brand for a warehouse distributor in Michigan. They've had it for years and years, but they just came out with it, I guess, is a while ago. It's got a little spring in the bottom, but a few years ago as a a direct-to-consumer brand. So, but that's got a decent filter in it, obviously. And again, these are all 10 micron filters. So, you go from one extreme to another here in filter sizes. And again, I like the amount of surface area. Either one of these work really well. If you've got that much crap in your fuel system, then I guess maybe that 12-inch bodied one from All Stars can be good. But yeah, I don't know how else you can look at that. But I don't remember the cost. The Aeromotive one was the most expensive filter I tested, but thankfully I already had it, so I didn't have to buy another one. It was unused. But everything else, I think that was $30 maybe. I'll leave some links down there to the Summit's website or whatever, and that way you can look at it. But these were under 50, I know. I think that All-Star was under 50. Maybe it was $60. I can't remember, but anyway. I wanted to show you all that just because it's not going to be in the video. The video covers another topic, but maybe down the road we'll do that. We'll take the same fuel system setup that I have and take a certain amount of dirt, that we'll measure and make sure it's a certain micron in size and throw it in the fuel system and see how much the filter will take before it clogs up. And I know it's going to happen, but that's ridiculous. So, can I rebuild quadrajets? It's been quite a few years. The answer to that's yes. One of these, I think it's across the garage, but I still have a bunch of hangers and rods that I collected back in the late 80s, early 90s, because that's what you did back then, because there wasn't a manufacturer of rods and jets, and the hangers are arched differently on the Q-jet, and they change. So the jets are there to, when they pull out, to give you more fuel. It's kind of like the ones in the Edelbrock. So they're all marked on the top with H or N or O. Just gives a different angle, and they're out of different cars. And then jets. I can't remember how they're marked, but it's been quite a few years. But I have rebuilt quadrajets, but I bet you it's been every bit of 10 years since I rebuilt one. So they're not complicated. They're just, it's like It's like the difference between the Edelbrock and the Holley. If you do only Edelbrock carburetors, they work really, really well at just mindlessly dumping fuel. They are always going to overfuel whatever you are working on. It's one of the advantages of the Holley carburetor. They just do that. And Holley's added some other, try to help to tune that with some different, jets up top to regulate how much airflow is going into there. But they will always flow a lot more fuel. The Edelbrocks are a little bit different and they don't just mindlessly dump fuel. Now it's a carburetor, it's an analog piece that's going to dump fuel, but it's a little more conservative in how it drops fuel in. So they're different tuning sides, and same with the Q-Jet. The Q-Jet is the same way. It just has its own little weird little idiosyncrasies about it that just makes it a little bit different in the tuning side and on the rebuild side as well too. So like I said, I just haven't done one in quite a few years, but I'll probably, now that you say that, their hybrid muscle garage, I'm just gonna call it HMC. That way I don't booger it up. But that's a good question. I haven't done one in quite a while, but yeah, drop me a note, or you can drop me a message over there on Instagram or whatever, I guess. And if you got any questions on it, I'd be happy to. And the good thing is mentioning the different hangers. And I think rods and jets, there are enough aftermarket companies out there today that make those. So like I said, back in the day, especially if you were a stock racer where you were running A stock or B stock automatic, or one of those that required you to run the factory equipment and you had to run a Q-Jet on there, that's what those folks would do when they would go to tune it. If they were racing in uh, Houston, Texas, and then they went up to Denver, Colorado, they're going to have to make fuel changes. And that's how they did it on the tuning side, is they would collect those rods and jets and hangers out of, all sorts of different carburetors to try to give themselves build themselves a tuning kit. And it's a great idea. It worked. But, as a Q-Jet guy early on, because I had a quadrijet on a street car, and then my dad was a Q-Jet guy, liked him, and I get it. But I'm sure I, made him feel funny when I put a Holley on, the next thing I was working on. But I learned to tune it, and it helped me down the road to work on them. So it's a great question, and I may do a rebuild video on one of those and a tuning video on a Q-Jet down the road. They're great carburetors. I absolutely love them, but that's the other problem too, is they're not, or as they've been out for so long that it's hard to get a good core where everything's in good shape, and still can't believe that. So anyway, yeah, drop me a note, and I'll certainly answer any questions that I have on it, but or at least try to point you in the right direction. So saw your parts. Yeah, I did see your parts washer one. You build some really cool stuff, and I know you've made mention of that or joked about it, that you overthink it or over engineer it or overbuild it, but that's what keeps stuff hanging around. I've got an old Delta drill press that I got quite a few years ago. This was made in the 50s, I think, and you take good care of it. You build it sturdy and tough, and it's going to last for quite a long time. So yeah, I love overbuilding stuff. I think it's awesome. It's one of the great things about your channel. So keep that up for sure. Let's see here. What else we got? But anyway, again, I just wanted to show you that kind of weirdness of those filters, and I still can't get over that. I mean, I keep staring at here, but I think this is the first time that I've had all three of these out. But even if you look at just that, cheap, $5, $8, whatever that was, you can pick up at O'Reilly's. I mean, just those, cheap little plastic replacement fuel filters. I mean, that element's got a decent amount of surface area on it. And then you look at that thing. I get it. Maybe it was cheaper. And putting a stainless type element in over a paper element, it's washable and cleanable. I get that, but how many times do you have to wash and clean that a day to keep the crap out of there? That blows my mind. I don't think I have that one, but yeah, we still got to do all the barb fitting stuff. Hopefully Monday. I'm gonna take some time away from all my other responsibilities and get that video done. It's gonna be up Saturday, so I will promise you that it will be up. So, um, oh, you know what we haven't talked about yet? We haven't talked about beer. So it's the last of the Yingling Oktoberfest beer. So uh, it'll. I don't. I think they only. I think it's like September maybe they come out, and I think it only goes for a couple of months. But anyway, it's really good. It's a little bit more darker beer, but I like it. So cheers to you all. All right. So let's get these back out of the way. I just that it still just absolutely blows my mind. I gotta finish up that video with these, so I'm just gonna set them off to the side. But anyway, the Aeromotive stuff I've used forever, and I know if you've watched any of my tuning videos or fuel system videos or whatever, you hear me talk about Aeromotive all the time, and there's a reason. It's just very, very high quality. It's made in the U.S. I lived in Kansas City for quite a few years, there in Lenexa, Johnson County side of the border, and just it's a really, God, that thing's terrible. But they're just a really good bunch of racers, and Steve Matuzak, the owner and kind of the lead engineer of it. Great guy and good racer, and just he's an all around made in America kind of guy, and I do like that about him. But I will always use Aeromotive as long as I keep building quality stuff. I will keep using it, even though it is leaps and bounds more expensive than anything else. I boogered up that fitting, but that's okay. So, but anyway, yeah, the barb stuff is coming, and I'll try to get all that video shot here in the next couple of days. So, anyway, all right, what else we want to talk about? I guess a big one. I hope you all saw the video that I did and dropped yesterday on the RPM Act. That one gets a little bit of. That one's always been a little bit complicated to talk about. Anytime you talk about the federal government and some of the things they do, and I get it, I'm the same way. I have a lot of distrust in it. I'm not very political in the way I think or go throughout my day, but I'm not immune to it. None of us are. Anything that they do that oversteps their bounds as lawmakers, it's our responsibility as the people that put them in office to tell them we're displeased with it or make them vote on a law that we want. And that RPM Act does that. The Clean Air Act in the 1950s, I guess it was. I can't recall. I'd have to look at all the dates in it. But when it was written, it had some pretty specific language in it about cars and what they were designed to do as far as emissions go, factories and the pollution that they were creating at the time. And I get it, we all have to breathe clean air and drink clean water. No one's opposed to that. The problem with it is when they made some amendments to that in the 70s, I guess it was, changed some of the wording in it, and part of it is no vehicle that has emissions on it can be changed or altered in any way, regardless of whether it's still used in service on the road, driving to work and, putting pump gas in it or whatever. And that's the problem with it. It's language that hasn't been enforced, but it's been on the radar of SEMA and enthusiasts for quite a while. And that RPM Act is for sure affects all what we all do. So if you got a few minutes, take and watch that video. More importantly, if you don't share the video, I leave a link down to the form in it. Share that and get it out there. The cool thing is if you've been on any social media sites here in the last probably 2 weeks, you've seen a ton of folks drop the links on the RPM Act. The problem is I don't think that they've done enough to explain why you should do it, and that's what I tried to do. Is I just read a bunch of stuff out there and just grabbed 6 questions and tried to answer them the best I could. I've been involved with SEMA. I've sat on a council and a network for a period of time. Won't go into too much detail about it, but those are leadership councils and networks within SEMA that work with different segments within the industry. There used to be one for manufacturers reps. I was on that one. It's defunct now. The community's gotten smaller, but there's one called Tora now that used to be LTAA. I was on that one for a little while. Those councils and networks are good, and SEMAs are really good for trying to protect the livelihood of the manufacturers and the enthusiasts within the industry, within the automotive aftermarket. And that RPM Act is one that we have to continue to fight. The good news is the SEMA Action Network and SEMA PAC, Political Action Committee that's on Capitol Hill. SEMA has offices in Washington, D.C., and they monitor all those things and make sure that there's not legislation out there that goes after what we do. And if there is, then they let us know about it. How we can react to it, and how we can get in touch with lawmakers and tell them we oppose it or we support it. It's not the only thing. It's not just stuff like the RPM Act. There's state by state type stuff. So if the state governments come out with something, I think I used the example in the video, Washington State, had a deal up there where they were, trying to, get rid of the front license plate on it and just have a rear plate. Well, some folks like that, and I would support that. I only want one plate on my vehicle. I prefer to have a nice clean front end on my truck or car or whatever. So there's stuff like that. There's stuff like, older vehicles and registration and stuff like that. So it's always good info. So signing up for the SEMA Action Network is a great idea. So if you haven't seen that video, for sure, check that one out, and for sure, share the hell out of that link. I want that to pass this year. I think we all do. It's good for our industry. So, I'll pop in the comments here and see what everybody's doing. Blaster cabinet coming up. Yeah, I had a cheap Harbor Freight blaster cabinet for a while, but my air compressor doesn't have enough gallons to keep up with it, so I need a bigger compressor. But one of these days when I build a different shop, we'll get into that. So anyway, talked about the filters. That video, like I said, is out Saturday. Talked about RPM Act. That was important. And again, hopefully you guys aren't bored by that. But again, it's very, very important that you get behind that and get involved with it. So garage doors open today. So if you hear cars and railroad tracks and, about half a mile away, it's the reason why. It's a beautiful 70-some degree day here. So I don't know what that is in Canadian maple leaves, 20, 21, 22 degrees Celsius, something like that. So it's a beautiful day. So, what else do you want to talk about? Oh, I had one other thing that I saw the other day. I wanted to talk about it. I'll do a video on this one down the road, but I wanted to talk about it now because I told him I would talk about it in today's live stream. I almost forgot about it. This is a fuel-injected regulator from Aeromotive. Again, more Aeromotive stuff. It's a bypass regulator. It's their A1000. I'll leave a link down in the description. But, essentially there's, the inlet side, outlet, and then the bypass side, so you can bypass it to return back to the tank. The question was, and just like every other regulator, you can adjust the pressure from the top. The question is what this port is for. Hopefully you guys can see that. That port on a naturally aspirated fuel-injected engine is for nothing. It is just it just reads to the atmosphere. And that's the way you leave it. You should leave it. It's like a little nippled, port. It goes all the way into the body of it on the non-fuel side, and that's what it's there for. It just reads atmospheric pressure. It's fine. You don't need to do anything with it. On a boosted vehicle, it goes to the intake manifold after the throttle body, I believe. And that's how it reads the boost reference, so it can up the fuel pressure as you need it. So, for example, if the engine experiences 1 psi of boost, then this will bump the fuel pressure up 1 psi, and that's important so you get enough fuel on a boosted engine, and that's how the regulator reads that. That's how it sees it. When you're tuning, there's ways you can do that as well, but the regulator is the really the spot to make all that happen. So the question was, should I plug it? And the absolute answer is no. In no situation, whether you're boosted, it needs to go to the manifold. If you are NA, leave it alone. Just, I know it looks like an open port, and we're all taught, to make sure you plug up all the unused ports on a carburetor or whatever. But this instance, just leave it alone. If it's boosted, goes to the manifold. NA, leave it alone. So I told him I would explain a little bit more about that. I'll probably do a video on regulators somewhere down the road because I've got quite a few different ones laying around here, and that's a good one to talk about. So, pop in the comments here and have another swig of this Oktoberfest. All right. Update this offered clean burn. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not. I don't want to. I don't want to kick the camera anymore either. I don't want to get too political on anything, but for sure, the good thing is about the RPM Act is there is some bipartisan support of it. SEMA will usually list out the senators or congressmen in the House of Representatives that support the RPM Act because there are folks on both sides of the aisle that support it. I know that it's popular to think that if you are on the left side of the aisle or Democrat side of the aisle, that you're automatically going to be against it. And I think probably in most cases you would be right. But there are some senators and folks in the House that are supportive of the RPM Act. So, it does have good bipartisan support. The problem is there has to be enough attention to it. And when there is, that's when they'll act on it. If we don't do anything, it will stay in there. And the examples that I gave of companies that have been attacked by the EPA and fined rather heavily for it, pretty remarkable. If you go on the California Air Resource Board page, they've got their own website. They will list everybody that's been investigated and fined and what the fine that they pay. And you will see, some manufacturers, you'll see some distributors of product, and it'll tell you exactly to the dollar how much money that they were fined for it. And again, there's some of it I get, going into California because it's the most restrictive state in the union. But here in Memphis, Tennessee, or wherever you're at, we're not jammed on top of each other here. And I am from the West Coast, so California is my home state. But I can't live there anymore. It's just it doesn't make any sense. They've overregulated it to death, and I understand why, but they've taken it too far, and that's what we're here for, is to stop it. And we have to make our voice heard. So for sure, even if you do nothing else, share that link to the sign up and fill it out. It takes literally a minute and send it off. It'll automatically send it to your representatives, and if they send you a follow-up email back, and it's a form letter, I get that, then you have their email address now that you can contact them directly. And if you want, bug the heck out of them. Send them 100 emails a day. I don't care. I don't even care saying that. They need to hear that we are not on board with that. That's the thing about race cars too. Race cars are so small of a segment in the industry or in the world that create pollution. There's a billion other things to go after first. So leave it alone. Yes, you're disabling the emissions on it to put in a different engine or transmission, whatever, but it doesn't make any sense. So we have to get that done. And I don't want to get political on it, but it affects us all, regardless of which way you vote. And I don't care which way you vote. We're got a lot of veterans in this community that follow me, and I'm certainly one too. And that's what we did that for. It's why we served our country. So we had that opportunity to do those things and vote on and have some say and some guidance in our country. And if it's not going right, we've got the ability to change it as well. So that's what that is there. So, all right. That's a good question there, Deer Slayer. How much horsepower will 600 CFM carburetor, Edelbrock carburetor sport? You know, it's like anything else. You know, it's a lot of it goes to the rest of the setup. Now, if it was me, and I was looking at it in horsepower only, I would say you're probably going to be under 400 horsepower. Now, does that mean an engine that makes 450 or 500 can't be supported by a 600? Absolutely not. But typically, the higher horsepower, the more fuel that you're going to need because you are pulling more fuel and air or more air in, and that's going to require more fuel. But really, it depends on compression ratio, camshaft, intake manifold, style of driving, a lot of those other things. So it's a really good question. But yeah, I think I'm kind of usually right around that 400, 450 area. And anything more than that, yeah, I start to get a little itchy because I don't want someone coming back saying, "Hey, we put that 600 on and I went to go dyno tune it and I'm running out of air at $5,000 and the carburetor's not able to keep up with it. I need to put something bigger on." One, cool, but two, I don't want anybody wasting money. So, especially not on something that I've, advised them on. So that's kind of the area I'm in. Uh, Hopefully that answered your question. And if not, ask a different one. I'd be happy to answer it. One other thing too, kind of along with the regulator line, we're getting into the summer months again. We had some 80-degree days here last week, which was a nice change from the from a month ago when we were, in the negative digits and had 10 inches of snow on the ground. What a ridiculous. That's why I moved to the south to get away from all that garbage, and here it comes. So, but anyway, um, I did a video on how to cure heat soak, but one of the biggest ways to do that is with a good spacer. Now, never use an aluminum spacer is one of the things I point out in that video, but that wood laminate spacer is one of my favorites because for whatever reason, wood is a better blocker of heat. Natural wood is a better blocker of heat than plastic, but this black phenolic plastic is amazing. So one of those two will help cure some of that heat soak your problem that you're going to have. So hopefully you're getting close to getting out there into the woods or out on the road and driving. And I know our friends up north have got maybe a month or two more. But yeah, so anyway, just again, another little thing that I saw over the last couple of days and figured I'd make mention of it. So anyway, I think that's pretty much all I've got. What questions do you guys have? I got 7 or 8 of you in there, so if you got any questions, now's a good time. I'll answer anything about anything: fuel filters, carburetor setup, picking the right CFM carburetor, any of the topics that I've ever covered. If you've got any questions on them, now's a great time to ask them. I will leave the floor open to you all. So I'm going to leave this out here just because I'm going to keep talking about it because it's ridiculous. So, 1-inch plastic spacer. Yeah, that's the good thing about if you've got a lot of underhood clearance and you can run a thick spacer, whatever you lose or think that you're going to lose in torque, because for whatever reason people think that the more space that you put between the carburetor and the intake manifold, especially if it's a dual plane, that you're going to lose some low end torque with it. Whatever you think you're going to lose there, you are way better running as thick a spacer as you can to isolate that carburetor from the heat. And the reason why this is so important in these days, where it wasn't really that important 15, 20 years ago, is the ethanol in the fuel. Ethanol boils at a little under 180 degrees. Now, what's your engine when it's at normal operating temperature at? 230, 220, 200 if you're lucky? That's still way above 180. And as heat comes out of the cylinder head, and if you got an aluminum intake manifold or an aluminum cylinder head, it transfers through aluminum really easy. It gets into the carburetor, and next thing you know, it's boiling over and you're spitting and chugging, and You go pull over to grab get gas or grab a cheeseburger somewhere, and you walk out 20 minutes later, and the car won't start. Well, it's flooded. All the fuel that's in the bowls of the carburetor has boiled over into the intake manifold, and now you got to clear it out. So that is one of the biggest ways to cure that. There's some other little tips in that, how to cure heat soak video, but that one's a big one, and certainly it will cure probably 80% of your problems. So I always like to bring that up, but it's a good question. 4-hole or open? You know what? I've always been kind of torn on that. I've seen enough dyno results of some things here over the last couple of years that will tell you that a lot of times it doesn't make that much of a difference if it's a couple of horsepower, but depending on the intake manifold that you're running, if you have a 4-hole intake, then fine, then run a 4-hole spacer. If you have a open plenum or a dual plane, then I always run an open centered spacer. Again, I've seen enough dyno data to know that it doesn't make that much of a difference. It just really depends on the intake manifold that you have, and certainly if you're on a spread bore type of intake, the ability to find these in a spread bore is I don't know. I can't, now that I think about it, I don't know that I've looked for one. So I think I've always just worked with a 4150, square flange style carburetor. But yeah, always run the open. That's what I do anyway. So, all right, cool. But what else did I want to talk about? Oh, I guess real quick here, I left it out here just in case I need to talk about anything today, any questions that you all had. But when we did the when we did this video on the tearing down the Edelbrock carburetor to get into the front side on the circuits, just to see what they look like, I told you that I'd ordered some. Let's see if we can find a light here. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can kind of see. But those transfer slots that feed the fuel from the bowls through there. Let me see if I've got you're not going to be able to see it, but the throttle plate will cover half of that transfer slot. And I should have used a different camera for this live stream, but I always forget and just use the action camera or cell phone in this instance. But those transfer slots, I think a lot of times what people get stuck into on the tuning side of things is they're trying to get rid of a little bit of a dead spot. And you can do a lot of things. And again, I think I've made mention of before that I can cure 99% of that dead spot with tuning, but it's that 1% that I kind of want to get rid of just to make that carburetor better. And I ordered some small files for it. The problem with that though is they don't, at least the ones I can find, they don't offer a lot of different sizes in it. And what I would like to do is I'm probably going to build or make a set of files. I've got somebody with a fairly decent mill that can make a file for me, and that way I can control the size of that. Because if I open up that transfer slot to try to do some tuning on these, I've got no way to control how big that opening is. Everywhere else I can control it. When you talk about the jets that are within the carburetor, when we talk about modifying the accelerator pump, which is that opening right there, and that slot that feeds up into here where the squirters go down, I know that size because I can use a drill bit of that size, and it's all good. But that slot I'm struggling a little bit with. So I think when I'm end up doing this, I'm going to make some different thickness files myself and see if I can get these a little bit better. I've got the dimension of what I think most of these are. The problem is this was a 1406, so it was a 600 CFM carburetor. I know what size they are, but I am almost certain that these are probably all a little different. And until I can either get my hands on the prints to look to see what these look like, or start tearing apart carburetors of different sizes to see if those are different, it's just something I'm working on. So Anyway, I got that going on, and then I think what I'm going to do with this carburetor next is I talked about getting into the secondary metering here, and I want to really take a look at see how that fuel. These are the passages right here. Okay. Let me see if I've got a. Yep. That's how bad I am. I still have that bucket of 1406 crap laying around. But oop. Oh, that's right there. As the fuel is drawn up through there, okay, those wells down here, and it feeds from the secondary jet. I don't know if you can see that on the video or not, but I want to take a little bit better look at how that fuel is run through there. The problem is, or also too here, those are the areas where the machine, when they machine these, and I think in the video where I did the milling down of this, I had a short video that I took at the Edelbrock carburetor manufacturing facility of how the machine comes down and it does like 10 or 12 different drilling operations on this at one time. The body's in a fixture, and then fluid is going like crazy because you don't want to. It's aluminum. You got to be a little careful with it. And they hit all of these to open it up to the sizes that they need to be. And then when they're done, they plug them. Well, that plug I think goes into that well. And I just want to see, just for my own morbid curiosity, if there's anything we can do on the secondary side to open up fuel a little bit. It's one of those tuning things that I'm just not quite sure of, but I wasn't quite sure of the front side of the carburetor as well until I, milled it down and got a better look at it. So, and I hope that video was fun to watch. It was certainly fun to make, but a little expensive, destroying a carburetor. But if you saw the crusty, I think I called it the crusty Edelbrock carburetor teardown or whatever on Livestream. It was for a kid that I was doing a carburetor for, and he brought it to me, and I thought it was kind of suspect, but holy crap, this thing was just foul. Well, there were the floats out of it, and that's about as bad. We peeled some gunk off there, but yeah. So the carburetor was trash. I wasn't destroying a good carburetor. It was a crappy carburetor. So, but anyway, I think what I'm going to do is sometime, maybe over the summer, I've got some time. I'm going to mill down the back side of this and start going down, and see if we can see what that junction point is right here. Okay, this right here are the two holes for the screws that hold down the booster. So I know what those are, but it's this one right here I want to take a look at, and it's that center well that pickup goes down into. I want to see what it looks like at the bottom and see how it moves off into the bowl. And if I can knock that aluminum plug out and open that up more, will I flow more fuel? Can I put a different size jet in the rear? Can I flow more fuel? I don't think Edelbrock carburetors run into that too much, but again, it's one of those little things it's already kind of knocked down and destroyed, and it's just more of a conversation piece at this point. But I do reference this quite a bit to look and see what the what I did with it, and just give me a reminder of what all these little pieces to the puzzle are. But the secondary side we didn't do, so we might get to that this summer. I don't know. Maybe in one of those next winter type of projects where I'm stuck inside and don't want to go out. So anyway, let's check the comments here. 4-hole, useful. 4-hole on the dual plane. You're probably fine there. I don't think you're gonna, as long as it doesn't interfere with the throttle blades on the carburetor, I don't think you're gonna. It's just getting it away from the heat. That's all you're doing, is trying to break up that barrier between the aluminum intake manifold and then the aluminum bodied carburetor stuff. So definitely don't use an aluminum spacer. If you're using a phenolic or a wood laminate spacer, that's what you got to use. I mean, you're just trying to block the heat, and anything you can do, and using that 1-inch spacer that you said you're using, you're good. I would be just fine with that. It'd be easy to tune. You shouldn't have any problems with it as long as you don't use a fuel filter that has this crappy little disc for a filter. You're good. Um, Thompson power plates. That's a good question. I haven't really spent a lot of time with it because primarily every time I've gone to tune a carburetor, I haven't needed anything else other than what is already supplied to me by that manufacturer. If it's Holley, they've got enough power valves and jet sizes, and on the newer carburetors, they've got enough so you can change the orifice size on the bleeds that go in the air bleeds or air ports that go down in there. You've got different, pumps sizes for the accelerator pump, and I've never needed to use anything else. So to be very honest with you, I've never had my hands on it, and I've never used one. So and I've had enough people ask about that either on a live stream or other videos I've done of what I think about it, and it's a good question. I wish I had a better answer for you, but the answer is I've never used them because I felt like everything that I've needed to work and tune on these carburetors is right there in front of me. So, yeah, maybe down the road. But certainly there's some different, booster styles and different types of jets that are out there that are more precision. And I don't think those are bad things. You look at some of the alcohol carburetor stuff by Get 'em Garage or Get 'em Engineering, or I don't know what they're called now, but Trevor Wiggins, his company, he's made a really cool carburetor, but he's done it a little bit differently on the fuel delivery side. They all deliver it about the same, but again, it just really comes down to how much air is going through the carburetor and how much fuel do you need to give it at the time. And if you can figure out the timing between all of those things, carburetors work really well. So again, just never used it. I think we got caught up on the questions. I'm gonna get caught up on this beer. So 1 second. All right. We talked about that Aeromotive regulator. Pull an annular booster out in case I needed it, but we haven't really had a need to talk about that. So guess we are good. All right. I think that's all I had really wanted to talk about. The catching you up on because I've teased that filter video now for a week and a half now or a lot longer, and it's been my inability to plan out a fuel system right. Part of it is I don't use barbed fittings very often, and these are 3/8, and going from 3/8 to an AN-6, then to a -8, because that's what I use on most of my fuel system stuff. It just my poor planning is what it was. But anyway, I've got a place in town that has that fitting I need. That other union flare joint, I think they call them, or flare union joint, where it's -8 on one side, -8 on the other, both on male, so it'll connect to the hose ends. So we'll get that shot and done. I promise you that'll be up on next Saturday, and it will be a very, very good video. If you saw the assembly loop video I did, it's kind of along that same lines, although the assembly loop video is a lot cheaper to shoot than this one. Again, this one was very expensive, but I think it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. It's been worth it to me so far to learn a little bit more about how fuel flows through a fuel system. And I think, yeah, I've talked about that a million times, that fuel chart, and it'll be in that video. I will definitely talk about it, but good way to set up a fuel system. You got your fuel tank and immediately run a filter, or somewhere downstream, run a filter before your pump, especially if it's an electric pump, and then run one after, and then run your regulator right before the carburetor. And that setup has worked for me flawlessly. It's folks that skip some of those that end up getting into problems. If you have a carbureted engine in I don't care what it is, 65 Mustang or a 76 Camaro, it doesn't really matter. Always, 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 always run a fuel pressure regulator. That regulator gives you another tuning point in the system that doesn't have that many. And giving yourself that tuning side or that adjustment point there is critical. And you need to know how much pressure is making its way to these carburetors. You know, if you're at 8 pounds of psi going into this Edelbrock carburetor, I guarantee you're going to have some problems. And don't think an off-the-shelf pump at O'Reilly or AutoZone or Advance or whatever that says it's rated at 6.5 psi. Horse hockey. I've seen 100 of them that are. I had one in one of the videos that I did that was on an engine that was, I think it was over 11. And it was a factory AC Delco style mechanical fuel pump that was rated at 6.5 psi. Well, they're all different, you know. I mean, springs change a little bit. The guy that was assembling that day could have been a little hungover, and maybe the first couple hundred he put together were garbage. Who knows? But always give yourself that adjustment point. And then fuel filters are always a big deal, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to do that test, is understanding what happens in that system putting filters in and what it does to the fuel delivery. And I'm going to answer some questions. I've got half of it done. The other other 3 of those filters we'll do this week, and we'll get it going. So anyway, get off my soapbox here, but that fuel system stuff, I've cured more problems where people will bring a car or a carburetor to me and say, this thing's running like crap, the carburetor's junk. Well, cool, tell me about your fuel system. Well, it's got a fuel pump and a tank and a filter, and it goes to the carburetor. What else you need to know? Where is your pressure regulator set at? What do you mean pressure regulator? I don't have one of those on there. Okay, we got problems, but we can fix them, so that's a good thing. I wish someone came out with an annular booster for the Edelbrock 1406. Here's the problem with that, and I've talked to Edelbrock about this, and I've learned a little bit more about this. If you look at the 1406, it is a 600 CFM carburetor. When you get into the larger CFM stuff, the 500 for whatever reason, and I think it has to do with the amount of volume of air that flows through that. When you look at the 500 CFM carburetor, they're much smaller, and I've got a, that's the other side of the garage. I have a 500 CFM carburetor here, and everything's bigger. The boosters are much bigger, so they're more restrictive. The throttle bores or the venturi is smaller. When you get into the 600, and in the case of the 750 on the Performer Series carburetors, you can't just pop the venturi out of the AVS2 carburetor and put it in the Performer Series carburetor. And the reason is I don't think it flows enough air to actuate and pull. Well, I did mark those, so you can see all the little, maybe you can see the red marks on there. But anyway, it's not enough signal to pull through there to pull enough fuel through it. So if you look at the AVS 2, I think it's the 1906 is the electric choke 650 CFM. The reason that's not a 600 CFM carburetor is because it needs more CFM and more airflow on the booster to get the right pull of fuel through the system. Just like they don't make a 750 AVS2 carburetor, they only make it in an 800 because the 750, I don't think, pulled enough fuel through the booster to get it to actuate, so they had to go with a bigger carburetor. I'd love to see them to offer these boosters separately, these annular discharge boosters separately, to upgrade for the 1406 guy, but I think it's too much work on their end to redesign maybe a smaller booster to get more airspeed through there. And change how it pulls through, but it would be too much research and development, I think, on their end. And they have a size that worked, and they have a size because they make that booster in its entirety there at Edelbrock. They don't buy these from another manufacturer. They don't buy them from China. I watch them make these. They cast them, all the tubes, emulsion tubes and pickup tubes and everything goes in there. It's all made right there at Edelbrock. Really, really cool deal. But I think that's the reason why there's not quite enough airflow, and it's the signal that kills it. But it's a really good question. I thought about that too when they came out. Of cool, I'll just buy boosters and start upgrading carburetors. And I think it's just because there's lack of airflow, especially in the 1406. For whatever reason, the 500 I don't think did that, but I think it's just because the venturi is so small that the airspeed is right. So that's what I think. It's a theory. And again, maybe somewhere down the road, I will buy a 800 CFM AVS2 carburetor, pull the boosters out of it, and start putting it in different Performer Series carburetors and see if we can get it to run right. And if we can, then maybe I was wrong. If we can't, then maybe it's the signal, and maybe it's not pulling enough fuel through there. And we'll know fairly quickly on the AFR. When we look at the exhaust side and see what's coming out the back, we'll know if it's right or wrong. So, well, cool. I think we got everybody's questions anyway. So I'll give it a few more minutes here. But if you've got any other ones, like I say, I'm happy to answer them. But good question on the booster. It's again, it would be a cool deal if it worked, but it's just sometimes when you work with different things on different style of boosters on an annular or a straight leg or a down leg style booster, for whatever reason, the airflow has a big effect on it. So we'll see. But maybe one of those for down the road. But that would be another very expensive video unless I can convince somebody at Edelbrock to give me a bunch of boosters to play with. But that may happen. But maybe not right now. But anyway, it's a good idea. But we'll see. I'm sure they did enough dyno work on it. That carburetor was developed out in Torrance in California, and they've got a 3 engine dyno cell. Used to anyway. It's all moved here to Memphis. Yeah, I'm sure they did that on a 600 CFM carburetor and with that annular booster. And at some point they realized that it just wasn't enough fuel. And that's why they went to the 650. So kind of a cool deal. But let me look at the comments here. I think we got everybody, but yeah, we'll get this fuel filter video done, and I still, for the life of me, I get it. I mean, that's cheap, and if you've been on this live stream from the beginning, you've heard me gripe about this or complain about this enough. But my God, man, that is not a filter. That's a cheap filter, but at least that's a doggone filter with some surface area to take some crap out of your fuel system. That is insulting. I don't think it was directional either. It was just the way it's made, but that has no surface area. I guarantee you that's going to clog up, but that's the way it goes together. Now, when you look at that fuel filter, you think that that's the size of that element in there? I was shocked when I pulled that apart. I thought, what the hell? Did I get half of the filter? Did they leave some of it out? Was there a smaller filter supposed to be underneath there? Nope. It is what it is. Man, come on, Jags. You're better than that. All right. Well, I got 11 of you in there watching, so I do appreciate that. But, yeah, if you got any questions, I'll hang out here for another minute or two and certainly answer any of them. But hopefully I gave you a little bit of update again. I wanted to update on the fuel filter side. I want to talk a little bit about summertime coming up. So, treat your hot rod right and keep it cool, and the fuel system will love you. Certainly don't want to talk about the RPM Act. That one is that's near and dear to everybody's heart. If you're again, it doesn't matter what you're into, and you don't have to be a race car owner, driver, whatever for this to affect. If you look at some manufacturers like Whipple, Magnuson that make late model superchargers. In this instance, on those kits, Edelbrock's a good example of that too. Edelbrock gets beat up quite a bit because they've got low horsepower kits. No, they don't. They've got EO certified and Carb certified kits, meaning the tuning is in there that is past the certification to get it. But the horsepower is way less on those kits than like a Magnuson or a Whipple, even though they use the same Eaton rotor assembly in it. And it's because, too, that some of those other manufacturers of kits will eliminate some of the the emissions control on the vehicle. They'll get rid of the catalytic converters and run a high flow cat through there. Still a really good cat, but it's not certified through the EPA and EO, and you can't run them. It's a change to the emission system, and it makes it illegal. Those companies would be out of business overnight. And don't get me wrong, I've had the Silverado that's on the video on here that I did quite a few years ago. I had an Edelbrock supercharger on it, which I tuned and did a bunch of things. So that thing was fun as hell to drive. it was my daily driver for almost the entire time I lived in Washington State, and it was fun. And that they would be gone without it. So that RPM Act is huge for sure. Sign that petition and share that link everywhere and share my video if it helps out, because it isn't just a, hey, here's this link, go fill this out. I think we're all a little leery of doing crap like that on the internet. But my video, I tried to answer some questions that I read online of what people were questioning about why they should fill out that form and they should care. So hopefully those 6 questions will clear up a little bit of it anyway. So, all right, one last shot of beer here, and then if there's no questions, I'm gonna get out of here. Hey. Alan, I used red color clean flow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying there for sure. I've done it before. AN style fittings, depending on what you're working on. If it's an ORB style fitting, there's an O-ring on the bottom side. I've seen people put pipe dope and pipe tape on it and Permatex and you name it. And yeah, it gets into the filters and you don't need it. That's a nice thing about the internet these days, and is you can quickly Google, do you need to use any type of sealant on an AN thread? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Yeah, you will jack some stuff up quick, and you get it into that filter and you start clogging things up. Or if it makes it past the filter and it gets into the carburetor and start clogging things up, you'll be chasing demons forever. What an ugly situation. I've been there before. I've seen it enough times. I know the mistake, and I probably made it myself, but it is what it is. Hey, mistakes are good as long as it doesn't cost you too much money. You learn from them, so all good, Alan. Took the screen filter out of my 155 gallon quick fuel pump. Return style regulator. Yeah, I love the Aeromotive stuff. Again, I'm a little partial to it because I lived very close by to those folks. I know them all very well. I've known a lot of folks that work there. I know one of them very personally, and knowing how aggressive that they are for made in the U.S. and their desire to be a U.S. made manufacturer, I absolutely love that. Now I know those days are numbered because these 2 Aeromotive pieces are made in the U.S. These Edelbrock carburetors were made in the U.S. But everything you see here, I don't know what brand. Oh, Earl's. Everything you see here, I guarantee you was not made in the U.S., including that Holley carburetor. Holley is no longer manufactured in the U.S. for most of their product. You don't believe me? Call Summit and tell them you're shipping a fuel pressure regulator and a pump to Canada, and you need a country of origin declaration and a harmonized tariff code number for each one of those, and see what they give you. It's China. Now, I'm not knocking Holley for that. It's how they've built some profitability back into their company. But Aeromotive, on the other hand, is very, very dead set about being a U.S. made manufacturer. And this fuel filter, I guarantee you, was 3 or 4, maybe 5 times the cost of this one by Jegs. But I know what I'm getting here. If I have a problem with it, I can pick up the phone, I can call them, all good. So I'll get off my soapbox a little bit on that one, but it's what I love about the Aeromotive stuff. That's why I'll always talk about it, and I'll always use it. So until they go offshore, which I don't think I'll ever see happen, but I guarantee you that was a fuel pump from Tanks Inc. I guarantee you that was made in Korea or China, Taiwan, something like that. Given the price on this All-Star one, I would have to look at the packaging to see if it said made in China on it. But same thing, if you ever had any question about where things are going, tell them that as soon as that product's coming to you, that you're shipping it to your buddy or your best friend or your mom in Canada, and you need a country of origin declaration or harmonized tariff code so you can do the customs paperwork. And yeah, they'll tell you where it's from, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised on the Holley stuff for sure. But again, I'm not going to knock them for doing their own thing. Edelbrock carburetors, made in the U.S., made in Sanford, North Carolina. The bodies are cast in West Virginia or Virginia somewhere, but then they're brought to Sanford, and I watched it. I watched them make these boosters. Watched them made the jets, which was cool, or the metering rods in there, and I watched them make all these things. It was cool to see it. Made in the U.S. still means something to me. Unfortunately, when you start buying things with your pocketbook and you say, well, I can buy a 10 micron fuel filter for $230, or I can buy a 10 micron fuel filter from All Star for 60. Yeah, I'll try this one, see if it works. Well, support made in the U.S. I do anyway. Took screen filter out so far. O-ring never sealed. Yeah, it's part of the problem with O-ring stuff. Man, I guess that filter is expanding a little bit, but this one's O-ringed. And any of the ORB type stuff, it's easy to jack those O-rings up. That's why most manufacturers will give you a torque spec on that, because they don't want you to push the O-ring out of it. And as long as the machined area is machined for it to ride into and for it to settle onto when it seals, you're in good shape. But yeah, O-ring stuff can be a little tricky. Same with these fuel. These are fuel injection fittings. Let's see if I can get one off of here without. But anyway, if you've never seen that style of fitting, and again, I've got EFI fittings, but of course they're on the other side of the garage. I've seen these leak too before, and they're a really, really good style fitting, but they're also very easy to screw up, and it just comes down to a little bit of quality, but a little bit of assembly, and I think most stuff that's on the market today, it wouldn't be there very long if it was really, truly a piece of garbage, but those fittings can throw you off sometimes too. So, all right, well, I think we're a little over an hour. So anyway, I usually don't like to keep these much more than that, just simply because it, your attention span is probably like mine at times, and I don't want to kill it. So anyway, fuel filter video next Saturday, 5 o'clock Central. I promise I will have that done, and it will be eye-opening. It's already been eye-opening to me, and once we get those other 3 filters tested, hopefully tomorrow, we'll start rendering and editing things out. I think you know what, I'm going to open this one up for Merle's. What the hell? But I'm going to have to grab some wrenches here. Let's see what we've got. Because I don't remember what this looked like, so 1 inch. It is, and let's see. This is the part where I lose everybody on the live stream because I'm digging through my toolbox for tools. All right, let's see what this thing looks like. Yeah, it's O-ring sealed too. Using the wrong wrenches. Sorry about that. Should never do that on a poor little defenseless AN fitting, but what the heck. All right, cheers. All right, let's see what that looks like. I gotta quit kicking that camera. All right, so that's a bronze style element filter. O-ring to seal it. And O-ring sealed on this side. It's not bad. I don't remember how much that one was, but it's also a 10 micron filter. These are okay. I don't dislike that style of filter. They usually work very well. Russell makes a lot like these as well that are really popular. I think most manufacturers, Holley has a couple, I think, that are. The nice thing about these, just like they are for Aeromotive and probably that All-Star, some of the Holley ones that have paper elements in is are replaceable. So, you save yourself a few bucks. You're not buying a whole new setup every single time. You just buy the replacement element. And these work fine. They're a little more difficult to see that they are gummed up and crapped up, but fuel comes through this side, pushes through the filter, and then goes through into the fuel system and goes to the carburetor, wherever else this next stop is. But they're a little more difficult to see when they're dirty, but they tend to change color a little bit, and you can kind of tell. And typically you kind of have to go by a mileage on them. Typically I'll go, if it's somebody that doesn't run very often, then I'll say run them for a summer and then get rid of them and change them out and park the car, and next year you'll have new fresh filters in it. But probably, I don't know what the actual mileage would be on. I when my junk is running, I tend to put a lot of miles on it. So, but that's a good question. So, anyway, hadn't seen that, but which is good. So I've got a bronze style element, and I know that's paper, and I think that's paper element that's in there. It's just not replaceable. Once this one is done, you just throw it away. It's that style of element. It doesn't have a replaceable element. You just pitch it and you're done. So again, this is the most awful thing I think I've seen in quite a while. This is the most awful thing I've seen since we disassembled this carburetor and found all that ethanol crap and garbage in there. That is awful. So that's what I'm going to leave you on, unless there's another question in here. Need help with your Mopar 360 RV? Well, you know what? I'm going to stick around. So you throw in whatever questions you have about your Mopar RV, and I'll see if I can answer them for you. I'll stick around for you. And I'm going to put this, come on, man, while you're typing that out. That's ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. But you know what? I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. That filter showed its true colors in the tests that I ran. So you will see that next Saturday when I drop that video. But anyway, it'll be a good video. I'm looking forward to it. So, all right there, Ruben Roel. Hopefully that's the way you want to pronounce that. What else do we need to talk about? I think that was it. So I'll wait for Ruben's question, and then yeah, hopefully you're ready to get your projects out and start driving, and hopefully use some emptied out the carburetors on what you're working on, and you don't have any gummy, nasty ethanol crap in it, or hopefully use some storage defender in there and keep all that stuff isolated and moving, and you'll have a good fire up and down the road. So probably should do a video on that too one of those days, what to do when you're taking a vehicle out of your wintertime storage, battery and fuel system, ignition, I would assume that's probably the order I would go into. If you weren't on a trickle charger, throughout the winter, there's that, and then fuel system is the big one, because if that's gummed up and crappy and nasty and ugly, then yeah. So, which is better for a carb upgrade, Holley or Edelbrock? Well, I've done that video before in the past, and I will tell you that really it depends on quite a few things. How you're driving it. If you're an RV, then you're not out hot rodding, you're not out racing the thing. You just need it to be dependable, provide that low end torque to mid range up to the 5,000 RPM that you're probably rated at on that engine. Maybe a little higher if you got a little bit more aggressive with the cam, but probably not. So in that instance where you're not doing a wide open throttle racing in it, then the Edelbrock is probably the best choice for you. And on a 360, again, just depends on what equipment, but typically the 500 or the 600 would be just fine, or the 650 AVS2. Those are the ones that I would use on that with the limited amount of info that you've given me so far. But Getting ready to get 82 C10 on road. Ugh. I like that. I like that body style. A buddy of mine who passed away quite a few years ago, when we were growing up, um, he loved the square body stuff and had a couple. And then, as I grew a little bit older and could afford some newer stuff, having some of those newer trucks and, early to late 80s stuff, I bought quite a few of them because that's what I could afford as a 20-year-old kid. And so hopefully that's on the road for you cool there, Mr. Deer Slayer or Mrs. Deer Slayer. I'm cool with that too. So Edelbrock more streetability. Yeah, I mean that's you get. I've heard that comment quite a bit, and I don't think you're wrong on that one. The Edelbrock does really good because again, when we talked about at the beginning of the video, the Holley carburetor does one thing really really well, and that is deliver a ton of fuel at wide open throttle for racing situations. Hands down, if you tell me you are going to the drag strip and you are going to try to build a 12-second car, 10-second car, 11-second car, whatever it is, 99 times out of 100, I am going to put you into that Holley carburetor. Hands down, there is nothing better. It is what it was designed to do. It doesn't do anything else really well. It does really well at delivering a butt ton of fuel, but not very good on a 360 RV, mobile home, whatever that's in type of engine. So yeah, I would agree with that statement. It's a little bit more street mannered on an Edelbrock carburetor, and that's fine. Again, I can make these perform. That happens to be the 800 that is for the Chevelle, and I am going to do some tuning videos on the car when the big block is in there and I get the thing running and driving when I get some doggone time to work on it. But and I'll take it to the drag strip, and then I will put that Holley on there. That is also an 800 CFM Holley, and I will show you the differences between the two. I guarantee you I will make a little bit more power. I know my AFR is going to change dramatically between the two, but if we start monkeying around with some little adjustments there, who knows? We'll see. But I won't cheat. That's an unmodified 800, and we'll leave it at that. So we'll check the comments. Ruben, if that answered your questions, man, for sure. If you've got any others on that, if you give me a little bit more detail on it, you can message me over at Instagram or you can drop a comment on any of my videos here. I try to answer every single one of them. And same with anybody else. I certainly put these videos up here because I wanted to share some experience and some things that I've done and made mistakes on to try to help folks get a better running engine, vehicle, brakes, transmission, whatever it is we do videos on. And if I can share some of my experience of, well, I won't tell you how old I am, but I'm in my 50s, so I got a lot of time working on this garbage, and I've made a lot of damn mistakes over the years. So if I can help you figure any of those out, the fuel system's a big one. That's why I use that chart all the time, because that has solved so many problems for me. So 602-9 for the cam. It depends, Alan. I mean, that -9, either on an Austempered iron or a billet core, the -9 series from Comp can go either way. Really, really good camshafts. I don't know the specs on that cam, and I didn't look at your comment to see if it was in there, but I have to be a little careful about, and I am too, about suggesting a cam. Now that may be the absolute right one, but I don't know exactly what old Ruben is doing there for his build. Is that 360 RV motor still in the RV? Is that what you're using it for? Did you pull it out and are using it in a B body car and got some headers on it and got some Kragers on there or something and trying to have a little fun? Sorry, I don't like Kragers, but everybody's gonna unsubscribe from my channel now that I said that. But anyway, it depends. And I've done a lot of cam profile specs, and I'll do a camshaft video somewhere down the road. I think I've done one or two maybe already. I certainly did the difference between lift and duration. That's a really, really good way of learning that and understanding which one is more important. 9 times out of 10, when you ask somebody for the specs on the cam, they'll go, "Oh, it's a Comp and it's got 700 lift." Cool. That doesn't mean anything to me. I need the other number. And I just explain a little bit of that in that video, and hopefully it makes it a little bit clearer to understand it. But we'll do a cam selection video one of these days. It'll be a fun video, and it'll take a while. I may do it on a live stream because that could be an hour-long video easily, and I may break that one up into a couple of different segments. But certainly there's a little bit of a science behind it. There's a little tiny bit of experience tells me that this will work, but a lot of it really boils down to is just making sure you match everything up, and it's a whole system type of deal. What you're using it for, and what kind of car, and what kind of specs are on the engine, what you're planning on doing, what RPM range you want to operate at, what transmission is a big one. So there's all kinds of cool ones, but yeah, that's a cool thing about camshafts these days, especially with comp. There's a reason why comp is the biggest manufacturer in the performance manufacturer in the world, and their R&D staff, their engineering staff is massive. The low shock technology lobes that they came out with several years ago, and how they preload the spring. They are the smoothest running camshafts that you will ever see, and they will, I guarantee you, spec for spec on their lobe design versus anybody else, I guarantee you'll make more power. Just it's been proven over and over again. There's hundreds of videos on it, with stuff like that. But again, if I had some dyno time, if I had some engine dyno, and I can't build one here in the shop, but I would love to have one, because that would be a fun series to do. It's certainly the differences between the comp cam lobes and everybody else's. Everybody else is still working in 1980, 1960, depending on the manufacturer. Comp is, they lead the industry. It's the reason why every major racer and race team in the world spends time with Billy Godbold, their lead engineer, camshaft engineer, because the dude is painfully smart. So again, I'll get off that soapbox. But keeping it in the RV and plan to rebuild it. Have an Edelbrock engine. Yeah, more pull H. Yeah, making a little bit more horsepower is a good thing, certainly in an RV, but it's the torque that's your big number there. And I think you're absolutely, Alan's thinking right there that, building a little bit bigger, torque side of things will help out. But really on an RV, transmission is just as important there. And if you're running the old 3-speed automatic in there, you tend to limit things a little bit. And a good overdrive transmission is always a really, really good idea in an RV. I've seen that over and over and over again. It's like anything new. You look at the new cars and trucks. The fuel standards have to be keep going up and up, and that's not a bad thing. I don't disagree with that. I want to see us get better there. But they're not making big drastic changes to the engine. They're making big drastic changes to the transmission. And I did a video on that as well, to show you the differences of where the engine RPM operates at. And if you operate at a lower RPM, you're going to use less fuel. That's just a fact. And that's why you look at transmissions 20 years ago, 4-speed electronically actuated, overdrive transmissions were all the rage, but they were still 0.85 final drive, maybe 0.75. I don't know what the 700 R4 was, or the can't remember what the Ford equivalent was. Doesn't really matter. But you look at transmissions now, and 4-speeds are a joke. That's not even half the gears in most of the transmissions that come out today. 6, 8, and now 10 speeds are getting up there. And it's not because that they want to make a more expensive transmission and more complicated transmission. It's because if you keep adding gears to it, you can keep the RPM low and still continue to build the speed. And then you change the camshaft profile, keep it down a little bit lower, and the power and the torque is all built down low. And that's why transmissions are so important. So I would certainly look at a transmission change there as well. It'll help you get a little bit more aggressive. They typically have a little bit more aggressive first gear, and a little bit taller gear in the front. And there's a mathematical equation. We'll talk about that one of these days too, I guess. But where you want to be versus what the gear ratio is in the transmission versus the final drive in the differential. And there's a way to multiply it to tell you you know, you get a number and you want to be in a certain range, and if you can stay in that range, you know, you'll be in the power range of a, you know, of an engine that you've built. So, but it all, again, it's all, you know, it's not one magic thing. You can't put a really badass comp cam in a stock engine and turn it into a, you know, 600 horse fire breathing monster. Everything else goes with it. So, but I love RV stuff. I do. I like the challenge of building those engines because again, I've built, you know, the Chevelle will be another 700, 800 horse project. They're fun. I enjoy the heck out of it, and they're easy to do. But sometimes getting creative in those ones that need to build power differently are just as much fun to do. So I love it. I'm a big fan. So keep that old 360 running. So whole, redo the whole fuel system. Yeah, for sure. You know, I've done some fuel system videos. That ultimate carb tuning guide I did on the Edelbrock carburetor is a good one to look at. It'll give you a lot of information. But then I did a separate video on how to. I still have all this stuff laying right here. I did another video on how to read the Edelbrock tuning chart so you can tune it yourself. That chart right there will make you look like a brilliant tuner, and I explain how to use that chart, and then it gives you all the secondary metering as well. And then I did a video on the step-up springs and the squirters, and you know how to make all that run. So it's if you that I've got an Edelbrock Carb Tech playlist. I can't remember what I named it, but if you look in there, all the Edelbrock carburetor videos I've done are in there, and it's a good one to follow and certainly reference back to if you have any questions. But yeah, fuel system's key. You build a good fuel system, and then you know do the tuning well. I don't care what it is, Edelbrock, a Demon, you know, if Thermoquad, Quadrajet we talked about earlier, you know, even a Holley, we can make them run. So we just got to be smart about how we go about it, and if you got a little bit of horsepower behind you, you'll push through the other side. So, well, cool. Man, we're in an hour and a half already. Oops. Didn't really plan that. Didn't want to bore anybody to death, but hopefully y'all got something out of it. Again, filter video coming next Saturday. That one's going to be pretty bitchin'. I'm looking forward to that one. So anyway, I hope you guys had a good day today and have a great week. And we'll catch you guys next week. So anyway, thanks y'all for watching. I do appreciate it. And you know, obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't say, hey, you know, follow me over there on Instagram. You know, I try to post some content of stuff that I do during the week up there, just so give you some fun stuff to look at. I got a pretty fun job that keeps me into the hot rod parts. So, but yeah, I certainly can answer any questions here. Leave any questions on any of the videos here. I'm always happy to answer them, and you know, you can message me over at Instagram and do the same there. So anyway, we'll catch you guys later. Have a good week. And we'll see you next Saturday for that filter video. You're going to like that one. We'll see you.